Ladies and gentlemen, happy to have this guest on the show. We spoke to them a few years back, and good things are worth waiting for. One of my favorite and most exciting UFC heavyweight contenders. The man I think is number 3 in the world now. We're talking about Curtis Razor Blaydes. Welcome back to the show, Curtis.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me back on the show.
You're very welcome. But yeah, I tell you, I think it's been 3.5 years since we talked to you last. I think you may have just beaten Justin Willis or something. And remember, he had talked all kinds of trash before that fight.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I remember that.
Yeah. So it's been a while. I think you've had like maybe 8 or 10 fights since then. A lot of fights under your belt, a lot of great victories. You're still a young man at 31. And this is a big fight coming up on July 23rd against the Englishman, Tom Aspinall. Question for you, because you are the higher ranked fighter, although he's been jumping in the rankings, but you're the more known commodity. You're the guy that people, I think, believe in more and know more than him, but yet you did agree to a fight in England. Was that something that took you a second to agree to, or were you like, I don't care where it's at, I'll fight this guy in a phone booth?
Yeah, I mean, it really didn't matter like where we fought at. I just wanted a top 5 opponent, and I was happy to get one. He's got a lot of hype. He is legit. He just beat Volkov, so yeah, I didn't care if it was in England or wherever. Just happy to get the fight.
Gotcha. And so, in the audience there, I think they're going to be yelling out that ole, ole, ole. It seems like they love to do that in England. I think it almost is like meaning like someone's bullfighting or something like that, and they're hoping that their guy's going to be the matador. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I know when you charge in, you normally take someone down. You don't normally miss too much. But this is an interesting matchup for sure. I looked at his record. I'm familiar with both of you guys, and I watch a ton of fights, and we cover the fights in person as well when we can. But I was looking at his record. He's had a few UFC fights, and all the fights he's had, he's won by stoppage. Before that, in the UFC, he had 2 losses, one by disqualification and one by submission. And then every single other pro fight that he's won has been by stoppage. He's never been outside the 2nd round, and a majority of his fights end in the 1st round. And so what's interesting with a guy like that is that what's he going to do when he has to see the 3rd round and the 4th round or the 5th round, if you even give him that chance. But what's your thought? And have you ever gone up against a guy who was just constantly finishing people early?
Yeah, I think that's the standard for a lot of heavyweights. They like to come out swinging, coming out aggressive, and he must have realized early on he had an advantage with the speed in the hands, and he took advantage of those. A lot of his early opponents. But I'm used to guys like that. That's the majority of heavyweights. A lot of heavyweights are looking to get in, get out really early. I think on the opposite. I liked the longer the fight goes, I feel like the smarter I get and the more effective I become as a fighter.
Absolutely, well stated. So you both are right in your prime. You're just 2 years older than him. You're 31, he's 29. Heavyweights are pretty much in their prime until like 35, and many heavyweights are still looking great at 40 and even further. You will absolutely be the toughest guy he will have fought. Volkov was a very tough guy, but I think as far as the high level wrestling, if you can click on, I'm gonna ask my producer to click on Aspinall and let me see. So let's see who we're looking at. So basically going back, even including a couple Cage Warriors fights, he fought Alexander Volkov. You're good there, doctor. Volkov is not a wrestler. Sergey Spivak has some wrestling, but not really that much. Arlovsky is not a wrestler. Alan Baudot, I think, is not really a wrestler. Jake Collier has a little bit, but not much. And then Cage Warriors, I don't even know who these guys are. So without a doubt, you're absolutely levels above anyone that he's gone against before with wrestling, and so I think that's going to be a factor. In fact, he seems to kind of be a better wrestler than most of the guys that he's gone against, and so when the matchup is like that, would you think that his corner is going to say to themselves, A, we're not really going to try to wrestle with Curtis because he's just going to beat us, so we're just going to try to like show our great striking skills and pick Curtis apart? Or do you think B, they're going to say, well, we don't care, Curtis may be a D1 wrestler, but our guy is going to out wrestle Curtis? What would you think their thought is?
Honestly, I have no idea. It's all about the confidence they have in their fighter and the confidence he has in his training. Like, if he believes he can wrestle with me, who am I to think that he's not going to believe in himself? I expect all my opponents to believe in themselves and their abilities. I wouldn't be shocked if he attempted to take me down. Also, I wouldn't be shocked if he was highly conservative and didn't want to be that aggressive. Usually, a lot of times when I fight guys, I'm the aggressor, but it's a fight, and fights are chaos. That's why I don't really watch a lot of film. I don't really do a lot of breakdowns, because regardless of what a guy did in the past, in this specific fight, who knows what he'll be? He might be the aggressor, he might not be.
That's true. That's true, and you never know. Have you ever fought in England or in Europe anywhere before? Forgive me for not remembering. And we lost Curtis Blaydes. But in this situation, Doctor, we should try him back. Hey, Curtis, we lost you there. Can you hear me? Curtis?
Apologies. I had a phone call and I tried to hit decline and I missed.
No problem at all, my friend. No problem. Apology accepted. No problem at all. So, have you ever fought over in Europe before?
Yeah, I've fought in Croatia. That's where I had my debut against Ngannou.
Gotcha. So what's your feeling about that? Does the long plane ride bother you at all? I'm sure it's not as fun as if you didn't have to take a long plane ride, but at 31, I don't think a long plane ride should be too much trouble. What's your thought about that, or the jet lag, or any thought about getting used to it? And how much in advance do you think you're going to get there? Maybe a week or so, or is that a secret?
I'll probably get there about 11 days early. This isn't my first long distance fight. I've fought in Croatia, Australia, Beijing. So I kind of already have an idea of what to do. And I wouldn't ever blame a loss on traveling or being tired, because I was on a long flight. It's not enough to impact the fight. So I'm not too worried about the long flight.
Absolutely. Does Aspinall remind you of any of your opponents, or a combination of any two of your opponents?
No, he's his own fighter. He got his own unique set of skills. He relies on the boxing, and he seems to be pretty explosive, and he does have a bit more of grappling in him than a majority of my opponents. But no, there's not really any similarities between anyone else I've ever fought.
Gotcha. Have you run into him at all, or his camp at all?
Nope.
Gotcha.
Never had any interactions with him.
Gotcha.
Or anyone he knows.
Do you expect any sort of trash talking or anything?
I don't expect it, but if it happens, I don't engage. That's not my thing. I'm not a promoter. That's the UFC's. That's what they're supposed to do, and I'm there to fight, and that's what I'll do. I don't do all the extra stuff.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, in England, not that people don't like you, but their local guy is Aspinall. So obviously, in England, they're going to be hoping he wins, and the fans, are really going to be cheering for him. Uh, has that ever been the case? I'm sure you fought in other people's hometown. Have you ever fought somewhere where the whole crowd is going to be cheering against you because the other guy's the hometown kid?
Yeah, I fought Mark Hunt in Australia, so I doubt Aspinall has more fans than Hunt did, and that didn't affect me. It's just people in the crowd. Honestly, I can't even hear what they're saying. It's all white noise.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, what are you doing for this camp? Anything different? I mean, I'm sure that's also asking secrets that you probably can't tell. But you got a guy here who I think is just as tall as you, although once in a while online they make mistakes. I don't know if you've noticed this, but frequently reference sites mess that up. They'll say one guy's 6'2" and he's 6'5", or they'll say, they said Jairzinho Rosenstruck is 6'5", and I think he's just barely over 6 feet tall. So I think, though, that you and Aspinall are probably similar height, or do you think I'm wrong?
No, I think we're about the same height. He might have a half inch on me.
Okay. And then the weight, is that similar for you guys, or who's heavier?
I think I'm a little heavier than he is. I'll probably be in the octagon at 260. I think he gets in there like 245-ish.
Cool. And have you been told anything about winning this fight, getting you a title shot, if I may ask?
Nope. And honestly, I really don't care. Putting energy into things I don't have any control over is futile, and I stopped doing that a couple years ago. So I'm honestly expecting after this, most likely the winner of Hui Toss and Cyril Gane.
Interesting. And that is a good thought. I like I think that's a biblical verse, isn't it? God, it's like the serenity prayer, right? Give me the strength to change the things I can, to, not worry about the things that I can't change, and the power to know the difference. Isn't it something like that?
Yeah, I've heard that before. It's just easier. There isn't any point in me being all stressed out about something that's obviously I don't have any control over. I could go out there and head kick Aspinall in the first round. That doesn't guarantee me a title shot.
Right, absolutely. It'd be exciting. Love to see that. So let me ask you to speculate about something else that doesn't have anything to do with you. Are we going to see Francis Ngannou in another UFC fight? Will he have already been stripped of his title? Is he not going to be stripped of his title? What would your guess be on that?
If I were him, I would retire from MMA. He's already done enough. He's not going to earn as much as he would earn in boxing. I would take the bag, take the opportunity to earn 40 million. I don't know if the UFC is gonna strip him. That's another. I don't know. That's up to them.
Right.
You never know with the UFC, so you'd be a fool to actually think that anyone knows what they're gonna do.
Without a doubt. If that fight, if that fight does happen with Tyson Fury, does Francis have a chance? He'd probably be like a 10-1 underdog. I don't think, even if they allow the fight with 4-ounce gloves, I don't know if that will matter. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think he has a chance. He's got the power, and honestly, I've watched a lot of Tyson Fury's fights. The boxing, I don't know. I don't think his footwork is very good. I think he's very hittable. He is very tall. He is very long, and he does have power. But I don't think he's the mythical monster everyone thinks him out to be. Like he is a good boxer, but I think he has holes, and I think in Anu he does have an opportunity. The sloppier footwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just talking to the legendary cut man Stitch Duran I don't know if you've heard of him or remember him. I think he may have been in the UFC right when you got there. Did you ever hear of him?
Yeah, I've heard of him. I never got a chance to meet him. I think he was. I think he's. I don't know if he got fired or if he just decided to not work with the UFC anymore. But he was on after I got there.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, he actually didn't really get fired there. What, just to make it quick, and this is because Stitch is a friend of mine, and this is really the truth. You can look back and see right when the Reebok deal came in, and they were telling fighters that you could not wear your sponsors' gear and make money. He basically had his sponsors' gear on his jacket, and they tried to talk to him on that and say, "Why don't you take that off, and we'll give you." A small Reebok sponsorship, and he was like, "Why would I do that?" And they said, "Well, you got to do it." And he was like, "No, I can't. I mean, he was an older man who's supporting a family, and they're asking him to take a 5,000% pay cut, and he said, no, we'll pass on that." So
Makes sense.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, but we were talking, and I was telling him that, yeah, Tyson Fury, he does move well, and I know you were mentioning his footwork isn't the greatest. You know a lot more about footwork than I do, so I'm going to take your word on that. But what I have noticed from watching combat sports for decades, I'm a little bit of an older guy, so I've been watching combat sports before you were born, and it does seem to me like he doesn't have the most crisp, straight punches and boxing technique either. He hits really hard, but he wouldn't be a textbook to teach, people how to throw punches. No. Right. Yeah. So it does, seem like perhaps if Francis could get in there and, and land something, but it definitely would be interesting, to see. But other than that, if we're looking at Tuivasa and Gane, a lot of people are surprised because Tuivasa was on a little bit of a losing streak for a while, and he was looking like he was just going to kind of be a guy who could never even get into the top 10. Then all of a sudden, he just made some kind of adjustments, and I think a lot of people were surprised that he beat Derek Lewis. But against Gane, Gane has a habit of making people look silly. Although Tuivasa, if he touches you, that's it. How do you feel that fight might play out? Who do you think wins that fight?
I feel like Cyril Gane wins the same way he was able to beat Derek Lewis, and the same way he beat Junior Dos Santos, and the same way he beat Jorginho, picking and popping, and then when they get tired, he's able to catch them with the hands down, and that's where he finds the finish.
Makes sense. And then if it goes that way and you beat Aspinall, then it could be you and Gane. And if they haven't figured things out with Francis, which they may not, then it could be you and Gane for the heavyweight championship, and that would be awesome. But I know you don't want to think that far ahead. Tell me a little bit about how a fighter can maintain such a high level like you do. There's a lot of fighters, and I was talking to Stitch Duran a little bit about this, but there's a lot of fighters that want to be successful. Like, a lot of people don't know, like I used to tell girlfriends that I had when we were watching fighters, and she was going, okay, that guy's kind of good, or this guy's not so good. And I used to tell her, these guys are the best of the best. I would say, when you're watching the UFC, think of it as like pro football. When you're in junior high school, everyone can play. By the time you get to high school, a lot of people can't make the team. When you try to play in college, a majority of guys that played high school can't make the team. And when you get into the pros, hardly anybody from college can make the pros. So it's like all the guys getting eliminated as the levels go higher. And I think it's the same in the UFC. You have probably a couple million guys who wanted to be where you are, and they just could not get there. They couldn't even come close. And then some guys get there, and then they start losing every single fight. How do you stay up where you are for a younger guy that wants to be successful? What are you doing? And can you tell me, do you see something similar to what you do, to what other successful fighters do, that allows them to stay at a high level and win?
I mean, for me personally, it's having a solid routine, consistency is a big thing for me. I don't like to just like if I'm doing a jujitsu and we're talking about half guard, I want to talk about half guard for a month, not just a week. I like to dive deep into stuff that way we can pick it apart and find the things that we like and the things that we don't like, and I'm able to add them into my game. And then having legitimate coaches that they get on me, they tell me when I'm messing up, and I'm very coachable. I like to learn. I like to grow. I don't want to be a stagnant in my growth. Because I know if I'm not getting better, then that means I'm getting worse. And really, I think having a strong background in wrestling, that was a major key for me early on. I really didn't have confidence in my striking, and it was I just had to rely on my wrestling, and thankfully, my wrestling was at the level where I could beat guys with just that. So yeah, just having a consistent routine, good coaches, and it doesn't hurt to have a background in wrestling.
Absolutely. What do you think of some of the matches that we've seen recently in the UFC? There have been some interesting matchups. We've got in the division below you, we've got Glover against Jiri coming up. We just had a really interesting match with Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira. It's unfortunate that Oliveira didn't make weight. I don't know if you heard though. A bunch of people are saying that scale was really different than any of the scales that they had in their hotel room. I mean, if that's the case, then that's a shame. But Oliveira just seems like a beast, and Gaethje's a tough guy. Were you surprised that fight went that way, or did you think it could go both ways, or did you think Oliveira would win that?
I mean, I accepted Oliveira on the ground. He might be top 5 all time, and Gaethje, that's his one weakness. So I knew if it got on the ground, it was probably a wrap, and I knew Gaethje would have to eat him on the feet, and he was able to knock him down twice, but with the hole in his grappling, he wasn't able to take advantage because he didn't want to get in Oliveira's half guard or full guard or whatever. So I wasn't shocked. I was disappointed because Gaethje's a friend of mine, and I was rooting for him. But I knew if he got on the ground, it was most likely a wrap.
Absolutely, and well stated. I kind of felt the same. And then I know also Rose trains out there, I think, with you as well. That was a very unusual fight. I think you may have made a statement online, I'm not sure, because there's all kinds of haters, and I hate that. You know, I have so much respect for you guys that even as a member of the MMA media, I'm never shouting out someone sucks or someone blew it or anything. But you see a lot of the keyboard warriors or pointing out that Rose saying she didn't even try and she just ran, and you know, and there shouldn't be that disrespect in that fight. But did you feel the result could have gone either way? Do you feel Rose got ripped off, or what's your feeling on the result and how that fight played out?
On the result, honestly, when you fight like that, it's up to the MMA odds.
Yeah.
So she can't be angry. I wasn't angry because honestly, I didn't know who won that fight. And yeah, in terms of the fans online talking smack, saying she's awful, she's a bum. I mean, it's just those immediate reactions, and that's one of the things I don't like about MMA. I think we have the worst fans out of the collective, like NHL, NBA, NFL, MLB. We have the worst fans. They have the most knee jerk reactions, and they're very wishy-washy. If you're only as good as your last fight. There was a time when everyone was saying those same things that they're saying about her. They were saying it about Izzy. They were saying about Anderson Silva. They were saying about ESP.
Yep.
They were saying about me. They watch one fight, and that's like your whole resume right there, and that's how they make their judgments. So all Rose has to do is go out there and get another exciting finish, and they'll forget about it.
Absolutely, I agree. And yeah, I think because and it's hard to put the finger on why so many MMA fans can be so crappy and so critical, but I think it might be, that sometimes a guy might be fooled into thinking that he can really fight just because he's trained a little bit, or maybe he wrestled in high school, or maybe he took some martial arts classes for a while. And I think a lot of guys are kind of fooled into thinking that you guys at the highest level are maybe just slightly better than them. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? They really think that. They're really thinking, okay, well, these guys are only a little bit better than me, and when they have a bad fight, I could have done better. Or they think if if they were Rose, they would have gone out there and done this and that, whatever. But it's a lot easier to say and harder to do. That's for sure. Are you also a fan of the sport as far as watching other fighters, or not really, or just a little bit?
Uh, I am a fan, but I'll be honest, I don't watch every card because there's so many cards these days. I watch maybe half of them now.
Right. Are any of your teammates coming up in any fights recently? Anywhere soon?
Um, my buddy Neil Magny, he has a fight June 25th at the Apex. His opponent is he's going to be making his UFC debut. I can't pronounce his name. He has one of those long Eastern European names.
Right.
So I can't pronounce it, but he's got one. And then I think he's the only one right now besides me.
Gotcha. Quick question, since we were talking about Charles Oliveira. I know he's probably either going to fight Beneil Dariush, and we've interviewed Beneil several times, or Islam Makhachev, and we've interviewed Makhachev's coach, Javier Mendez, several times. Both would be good fights, but I think they're talking about Makhachev right now. Makhachev is already saying that he'll just beat down Charles Oliveira, and on the ground he'll just he'll beat him down. Oliveira doesn't have a chance. What do you think of that fight? Which way would you lean there, or do you think it's pretty even?
I think it's pretty even, but I would still say I would pick Oliveira because he has more offensive attacks. He's a lot more aggressive with his jiu-jitsu. Islam is very defensive, and he hardly ever gets hit. And when he does get takedowns, he's able to dominate. But he hasn't gone against a guy like Oliveira. I think Oliveira's had a lot more experience with other high level guys that can have jiu-jitsu and wrestling. So I think he's prepared for this, and honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he was able to get the submission.
That would be amazing. That would be great, because these guys from Dagestan are very tough. Any quick thought on Izzy against Jared Cannonier? Can Cannonier bring anything to Izzy?
I think it'll be a tough fight, and he has a puncher's chance. But if I was a bid man, I would put my money on Izzy, just because he has a lot. The margin of error is a lot bigger for him. He doesn't have to really go outside of who he is. Cannonier's gonna have to find the knockout early. The longer the fight goes, the more Izzy's able to read him and potentially put him away.
Absolutely. I know we got about 3 minutes left. Wanted to ask you an interesting question. I was actually thinking about when I was laying in bed last night. I thought to myself, man, if I was a UFC fighter with a fight coming up, now that they have all kinds of betting odds, you could bet on the fact that you're going to win a decision. You could bet on a fact that you're going to win by submission. or by knockout, and sometimes you can get some really good odds. I think to myself, are fighters sometimes saying to themselves, man, I'm going to pick up, let's say, 100 grand for this fight. Maybe I'm going to put 10 grand on me winning by submission, and then I'm going to work as hard as I can to get that submission. I'm not asking what you personally have ever done, but is that something that you think some fighters will do? There's nothing wrong with it as long as you're not betting against yourself. But is it possible that you think there may be a group of fighters that are sometimes adding to their paycheck by making some bets on themselves to win?
Yeah, I think that's highly possible. I wouldn't do it just because I'm very superstitious, and I just think that's bad luck. So I wouldn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was already a thing. And I make enough, so I don't feel the need to risk the extra money.
That makes sense. I would agree. Last question. You've had fights against various different levels of fighter coming up. Some fighters you came in against, you probably had a lot of confidence that you could be at your worst and beat this guy. Other fighters, you have tough, and not that you ever disrespect a fighter, but in all honesty, there's levels to this game. And do you enjoy facing the better fighters more? Because I would imagine if you're facing a fighter that doesn't have much for you, it's not going to be a hard day in the office. You're not going to get cut up. You're not going to pull a hamstring or twist your ankle or throw your shoulder, your back, your neck out by these crazy scrambles. And that's more fun, not to hurt yourself. But then on the flip side of it, is there some fun, and would you rather be going up against a guy who's really tough and dangerous, and that you're going to have to be in some serious conflict with?
I prefer high level guys just because maybe it's the wrestler in me, but I don't enjoy eating up on bums, as I can't really. It doesn't get me like excited. I mean, I like the money. It is easier money, but I like to be able to brag about guys that beat.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, I really appreciate it, Curtis. In the last minute we have you, how can people support you on social media? Let me know if there's any projects you're involved with that you want that people could support.
You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at RazorBlades265. And I recently went to a fundraising event for an organization called Say, SAY. It's for speech impediments for the youth. It's an organization for other people, predominantly teenagers and like youth that have speech impediments. And it's just like a program that they can enter that just helps build their confidence and teach them that there isn't anything wrong with them, and they can have a normal everyday life also.
That's awesome. And that project is called SAY. Is there a website for that, or a full name?
I think that's the name of the website, SAY. I think they have an Instagram. It's also SAY. Like I said, I just recently went to the fundraiser about a week ago out in New York. I just heard about them, although I've had a speech impediment my whole life. I recently just heard about them, so I would be surprised if the majority of the world hasn't heard of them.
Okay, we'll definitely check that out, and I think that's an admirable thing that you're doing. My brother had a speech impediment for several years early on in his life, and it's definitely tough on you, man. And so it's a good cause to support because, like you said, there's nothing wrong with them. We all have different flaws at birth that we have to deal with, but that's a great cause, man. And that's awesome that you went out there and supported, man. And that shows that you have that love in your heart and compassion for people, and that's huge. A lot of people don't know a lot of fighters do have that love and compassion, man. So really give you respect on that. Curtis Blaydes, I want to thank you so much for jumping back here on the MMA Power Hour, man. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Can't wait to see you do your thing and get the W in England July 23rd over Tom Aspinall.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And happy to be on the show.